I'm happy to announce that I am starting a new series. Earlier this year I collaborated with another YouTuber to help her with a border that she was having difficulty with. It was a lot of fun, and I have now reached out to some of you to extend this into a new series. Hello, I'm Rosy Hardy, this is Rosy Hardy Gardening, and if you are enjoying our videos, please do subscribe. On our email list we asked some of you who are having trouble with your borders to contact us, and from these we are going to highlight a few. First is Louise, who is having a real problem with her hot border. Hello Louise, thank you very much for sending in your details about your border. Now I'm looking at this first photograph that you sent me, and this is meant to be a hot border, and what you're trying to say is you're just not getting what you want because you've ended up with much more of a yellow border. So let's see what you started off with. You started off with an area which was very weedy, covered over with a pergola. You've taken that down. You've got a beautiful border. You've got a brick wall which is lower on one side, you've got a tall brick wall on the other side, and then this large expanse. And I understand that you decided that it was far too big an area so that you could actually have grassed down one bit and done this other bit as your hot border. Absolutely no problem at all. Now I asked you some questions because me looking at this area, which what you started off with was the fact that you've got an area, you've told me it's quite protected, it gets a bit of sunshine, and what I am seeing is I'm seeing two red brick walls which act as radiators. Now they may not, well, they may feel warm to the touch, but basically what will happen is they will absorb a lot of the sun and heat, and therefore the border will get quite hot. Also what they will do is, because bricks tend to draw in and draw water, they will also dry out some of the soil which is near the edge on both sides, so both at the back and the front of the border you may find that that soil is drier. It looks a little bit compacted, so you know that's something to think about. Lovely list of plant material you've got there, but it all seems to be flowering in a smallish time, so you haven't got the extent of flowering, and some of them are one-off flowering plant material. So this is something that we need to have a look at. And also when I look at how you planted it, the density is not there. So we'll talk about that a little bit later. And especially when they're growing on and getting a little bit bigger and maturing, you can still see an awful lot of space in there. I know you need space for the plants to grow into, but you do need to plant at a relative density. Now I understand that can be expensive, but I'm going to give you some little tricks and tips to actually look at. You have got some reds in there and a little bit of orange, but your propensity of plant material that is flowering for the longest is the yellow. So you need some longer flowering reds and oranges to get your hot border effect, and you need to have a few more shrubs in there and other things like that. So having looked through all of these beautiful photographs, I've then asked you some varying questions regarding this site. You have originally given me what the challenges are, and we'll come onto those a little bit later, because I used what were your challenges to actually then ask you some questions so that I could help you with where we're going. Now you do say you're a novice at doing this. Nothing wrong with that, you know, we all make mistakes. I still make mistakes when I'm doing gardens, but it's not insurmountable. There are things that you can do. There are things that will easily be a quick fix initially until everything fills up. So that is what I'm trying to do. So I asked you originally, is there a specific reason why you have avoided planting to the edge of the border? Because I noticed that you've got the brick and then you've got quite a big distance before the next lot of plants. Now, originally what you've said is that the wall is a bit high and you should have bought some more compost and added it and raised the height. But also you're talking about taking maybe 1 or 2 layers of brick down. Either works. This is a trick that you've missed, is this planting nearer to the front, because that is really something that would work really nicely for you. You also stated that you've gone with the good old-fashioned small at the front, medium in the middle, large at the back. There's nothing wrong with that, except that you've got to have it in good big batches. So this comes back to my saying at the beginning there that the density of planting was not enough, and in fact it's a little bit bitty because you've got one of this here, one of that there. Okay, that mirrors through the border, but you only really want to be doing one of this and one of that if they are big chunky pieces that are going to stand out. If you're going to do other plant material, it should be done in groups, it should be done in swathes, not necessarily round groups but in swathes so it goes through. You're also saying that one end of the border the plants have grown much better than the other end of the border. Now that there are a few things that can be causing that. One is that they're getting much better light at one end, or that whatever is underlying in the actual border there may be better water retention in one area than there is in another area. And that you wouldn't know unless you dig right down to see what is below. So you could have a much freer draining area at one end and a much more water retentive area at the other end. So that is something that I would say you need to think about, and if you know that's the case, then the ones at the top end want to be ones which don't want to have so much water. So there's a little bit of change of plant material that you want to be putting in that you can carry on. The next question I asked you is, what is the soil pH? This is really key to knowing what you can then grow in these borders. And very luckily you went out, you were very good, you went out, you bought yourself a pH testing kit, and you tested various bits of the border, and very well done for you for doing that. It does help. So it does mean that you have worked out that you have got a neutral pH. So that is coming out at around about 7. So on the pH scale, 7 is neutral. So that's great. So that is really good start, because neutral soil is great. You can grow so many more things in that type of soil. Recently I set up an email newsletter, and if you want to sign up, then please click in the comments link below or scan the QR code on the screen now. If you sign up, you get an exclusive video. This is a video of me explaining colour combinations and plant combinations in real gardens. Next I ask you what soil type it is. Now this is completely different. People do get confused and think that the acidic or neutral is the basis. No, you need to know both. So the soil type is it clay, is it a loam, is it sandy, that type of thing, and then you add in what the pH is, and that then helps you with your choice of plants. So you've attached me a little video, which is brilliant, showing me that when you take a handful of the soil and you put it together, it balls slightly but then does break apart. So you're thinking that it is a clay loam. That is absolutely fine. You can form it into a sausage, but it breaks up easily. And your neighbour is telling you that it's a clay area, and she probably thinks this border has been improved. And you've only lived here for a year, so you're not too sure how everything is going to work, so that is fine. I think, you know, it may have had, because it's a raised border, it may have had some completely different soil added so that it's been improved per se. So that may not be the same as other borders in the garden itself. But it looks as though it lacks substance. And that is, it hasn't got enough organic matter in there. And you really need organic matter. You know, and the more organic matter you can put in, the better it is. So please do think about the organic matter that you do. So carrying on with that, I then ask you, has it been well mulched? You're only newly there, so you don't know the answer to it, but you haven't actually mulched it. It was the next area you're going to mulch. That's absolutely fine. And you're asking me whether or not you should mulch in the autumn or in the spring. Just mulch it. You know, it needs organic matter. So if you can get as much organic matter on there as possible, the better. So, and do remember that when you're mulching, your mulch must be a minimum of 6 centimeters or 2 inches. That's the minimum you should be putting on, and just cover the whole lot. And if it looks as though it disappears in the spring, then put some more on it in the spring. Absolutely. The more you get on there, the better. And it really will help with what you have got planted, etc. I then asked you how warm the brick wall at the back and the front get, as they could be acting as storage heaters. Not only storage heaters, but also absorbing any moisture out of the soil that is there. So that is something to be aware of. And then also, what is your average rainfall? I need to know that. And you are up in the northwest, near Northwich, and yes, I love your comment. It feels like it's rained a lot. Absolutely, everybody's had a lot of rain. But that doesn't mean to say that you've actually had rain, as much rain in that border. You can have rain shadows in your own garden. So it is worth getting a rain gauge and just putting it somewhere in the middle of the border and having another one in another area of the garden, and just see how different they are. If they are the same, absolutely no problem. But you may find that not only is it a sheltered area from the point of view that it doesn't get as much wind or anything else in there, it may also be sheltered from rain as well. So just be aware that, you know, it may seem as though it's rained a lot. You may not get as wet on that border. That is something that I would look at as well, because it makes a difference to the root systems that you've got going and sorted out. So from there, where are we going to go, and what are my suggestions to you? Well, I sort of said and said that there are some quick tips to getting it to actually looking fuller, being more inside, and not costing you too much. Now, you said you've already divided up some plants from other areas. Brilliant. You've put in Geum Totally Tangerine from another area in the border. That's great. That's a long season flowering orange. The other geums that you've got in there tend to be one season ones. So you need to have a think about grouping those one season ones so that they're not dotted around. I do think it would be a good idea for you to lift everything in the spring and regroup them so that you have got the odd tall plant at the front. So you've got some Anamanthele, for instance, in there, the lovely orange grass. That could come forward and be tumbling over the wall. Then you could put some smaller geum next to it. Then you can put your Rudbeckias together rather than having them a little bit dispersed. That is something I think you need to do and think about. Your Achillea, the Achillea that you've got looks like gold plate. I'm just double checking, you haven't actually got it on. Yes, cloth of gold. So cloth of gold can get quite big and chunky. You've got a little bit forward, so it's dominating. I would move that slightly further back. Now then, you can get yourself some annuals, so some seeds of things like Escultia, Papaver, all of these which are in orange colours or red colours, red annuals like that flower and flower and flower and will then maybe self-seed into the border. That will help you a huge amount with what you're trying to achieve and getting going. The other thing that I think you're lacking in there is some half hardies such as salvias. There are some really good red and lipstick pink, which you may think is a strange colour to put in, but if you go for something like Salvia Cerro Potosi, it has such a long flowering season, and if you put it in there along with, say, Salvia Royal Bumble, you will get all of that colour that you're missing both at the beginning of the season and at the end of the season, because they just keep on going and they give and give and give. So that is something that I'm thinking of. And then slightly controversially, I would also add into the mix and put it somewhere near the back, Salvia Amistad. Now I know it's purple, but you will find that it will help with you getting that brightness into the border. You just need the odd one or two of them in there, and you'll be amazed at how much brighter some of the other colours will look, because it will help soften the yellows and it will help bring out the colours of the reds. So that is something that I would actually suggest that you do, is get in those sorts of colours. So let's think about this in a way of what you can do. So my notes here have said that you've got a short supply of orange, so you need to concentrate on things that are orange. You need to have a slightly stronger colour in the way of Kniphofia. You've got one, but I think you really need to be looking at something like Kniphofia Amsterdam, which is a much stronger orange. It's a good plant, it reblooms. The other oranges that perhaps you ought to look at are the Heleniums. You've got Sahin's early flowerer. Well, that tends to be very much a yellow, then with a little bit of orange. So you've highlighted yellow being a problem. So you need to get the orange and the red back in. So my two suggestions with Helenium would be Helenium Mahogany or Vicky, and those will give you some really good strong colours in there. I think you're missing a bit of height in grasses. Grasses you've got are slightly lower. So Miscanthus Malepartus would be brilliant. It's got beautiful red flower heads. It'll give you that bulk and it will look really quite nice. Then carrying on, and you did say about the fact that you wanted to be able to put maybe some more shrubs in. Think of things which have got red or purple foliage, because that will help with your hot border and give you some structure in there. So things like Physocarpus maybe, or Berberis, and that will give you extra height from that point of view. And then other things of interest, so I've already mentioned the fact that you can put annuals, half-hardies, biennials in there. So we've said Papaver and Escultia, those you can do from seed very, very easily. Get the darkest ones you can, that will be really good. Then I've thought about half-hardies. I've mentioned salvias, but other things such as dahlias, you can get some really good cracking reds and oranges in those, so that will help with them. And then the red sugarcane, Saccharum rubrum, is really great because it has a lovely dark stem and it's a great plant. And then you just split it up and put some pots into the cold frame or greenhouse, and you can keep it going. So those are really easy things to look at. What else have I put down on my notes? Right, you've used red geum, and the red geum that you've used you've used Mrs. Bradshaw. Now Mrs. Bradshaw, good old variety, but not the strongest doer. So I would suggest you replace that with Geum Scarlet Tempest or one of the Tempest series, because they flower and flower and flower, and you will continually have that red in there. So that is something to think about. And then another herbaceous which has a good purple red foliage is Eucomis Sparkling Burgundy, and that'll just give you a little bit of difference. So what I've tried to do there is give you things which will flower at a different time, will rebloom. This is the problem you've got. You haven't got reblooming necessarily. So that is where I would suggest you go. I would suggest you lift what you've got, regroup, and then if the area is not big enough, because you haven't got enough plant material from what I can see there to do more than half of the border, get them regrouped and then put in the seed material, the biennial stuff, or regroup them around the actual border so that they're in the best clumps and the best positions possible, moving some of the bigger thuggier stuff, like I said, the Achillea to the back, moving the Anamanthele to the front, and then leaving yourself with gaps where you can put in the half-hardy stuff, you can put in the annuals, and then gradually, as you can afford to, get and regroup and put different varieties in. So the ones I've suggested, putting those in, and then gradually making the border go through. As I say, using annuals, using biennials, using half-hardies, because they're quite easy to get going. They're not as expensive, because once you've got one plant, you can take cuttings, you can take seed, and you can move it around. And I think that is the way to be going forward. So I've done a very, very silly sketch down the bottom here. And basically what you've got at the moment is very bitty bits and pieces, whereas what you should have is, if these are all the same variety, you'd have 5 of something going in a group like that. You'd have 1 something that is really going to be quite large, and so you get low, you get high, then you go low again, and this would just be a group of something else, which just gives you a ribbon through. So you've got these ribbons going through with these tools. So you have something upright like that with something low beside it, so that you get that flow. And the more you use things which are repeat flowering, the better it will be. So I think this is where you've really got a sort of problem with what you are growing in there, from the point of view that you haven't got a cohesive stream of plants going through everywhere, and that is what I'm trying to explain. So this is your bitty growth. It will eventually grow into something, but it will always look a little bit moundy, very yellow, whereas if you do it in this way, by giving yourself some swathes and something that's big and going through, so this could be your miscanthus, this could be your anamanthele, this could be some annual poppies, for instance, or escultias, because they'll go right over the wall. This could then be and you could have your, say, your Achillea somewhere in there, and then, you know, various other things just going through, so making it much more of a pattern. And, you know, these bitty ones, grab the 3 or the 5 that are the same and put them in a nice patch, and then plant around with the new stuff. And I think that's the way you need to go. I hope that helps you, and if you've got any other queries about what I'm trying to explain to you, then please do come back to me. Thank you very much for allowing me to have a look at this border for you. It's been a really great exercise, and I hope you have fun creating what you're wanting to do. I hope you've enjoyed this video, and if you do like watching them, then please do subscribe to the channel. If you want to watch another video of mine, YouTube thinks this one is perfect for you.